So Trump has mentioned a few crypto companies. Lately, he's mentioned XRP, SOL, ADA. This is the acronyms for these certain crypto companies. And so what they're doing, the Ponzi scheming, is basically you take if you invest in a wealth fund, a government treasury wealth fund with cryptos, that means that when those crypto currencies are embedded inside the Treasury Department, that means that the government now is responsible for those crypto coins. So now you're embedding private company currency inside the Treasury Department. See, the Treasury Department is a sovereign treasury that it belongs to Congress and the purse strings of Congress. But now, well, traditionally, the Treasury Department, in order to borrow money from the Federal Reserve, the Treasury Department has to issue out government certificates and notes, IOUs, and treasury bills and security bonds to be sold in the open markets. So any private investor can buy into America's debt as IOUs, and America has to pay investors with interest to the stock exchange through the Treasury Department by the IRS taxing the American people in order to pay back for that money that was invested in their stock bonds or treasury notes. And the government has to pay it back with interest. And that's how the government borrows from the Federal Reserve. So it's always been like that. But now you're talking about investing private entities, shell companies, cryptos, that they just created their own cryptos. And you got to understand, crypto is not money. Crypto is a blockchain. It's a transaction between one party to another party. Supposedly, the only advantage of it is that is not governed by the Federal Reserve. So it's not monitored by the Federal Reserve because it's a private company. And so the private company are the ones that monitor the transaction between two parties, transacting money transitions from one party to another. So they call that blockchain. And that's the system, a blockchain. It means that it's secure, that one person can send money to another person and the transaction is encrypted. So you know where it came from and who it went to. But the only aspect of it is that it's not monitored by a Federal Reserve bank. It's monitored by a private company, the company that owns that cryptocurrency or that crypto company. But it's not actual money that you're buying, like gold coins. It's not coins. It's basically you're investing in a company that calls itself a crypto company. And that company is in charge of monitoring blockchain transactions. So when one person send money to another person as a form of payment, that the transaction is monitored by that company. And the advantage of it for some people is that it's not governed and monitored by the Federal Reserve, thereby is not monitored by the Treasury Department and the IRS. So the thing that Trump is doing, he's taking crypto companies and now inserted it into the government, to the Treasury Department, as a form of investments, as a wealth fund. So now Trump's robber baron friends and his oligarchs are going to use these plethoras of crypto companies to launder money to each other through shell companies, to blur the quid pro quo transactions, the blockchains. They can do that by creating so many transactions with different non-entities, meaning shell companies, and somehow you can never trace it back. And since these blockchains are controlled by private companies, they can delete their records because it's not monitored by the central bank or the Federal Reserve, neither by the Treasury Department, because these crypto transactions are in the hands of crypto companies. So these companies can make a payment to each other. A robber baron or a Trump oligarch can make a payment, and then that same company is in the pocket of these companies because they all embed together to loot the nation for Ponzi scheming, for quid pro quos as robber barons and oligarchs around Trump. So now these private shell companies, crypto companies, they can make transactions to each other, kickback payments for government deals and government contracts, and now they can delete the transactions because now the Federal Reserve doesn't have no way to audit it. As far as the supposedly, because the blockchain, the whole aspect of that is that's private transactions, and so all the company has to show is a balance of stock exchange of investors, but not showing the blockchain transactions, because the blockchains are kept private from the Federal Reserve, thereby from the IRS, is kept private. All the crypto companies, all they got to show is their stock shares, how they're performing, how their stocks are performing. So now you can blur the blockchain transaction payments. So by Trump inserting these private companies cryptoing their own wannabe currencies, which is not really coined, or meaning coins, real coins, it's just binary codes of blockchain transactions. But now Trump is inserting this a plethora of crypto shell companies, in my opinion, into the Treasury Department. So now the government is in the business of managing these crypto companies through oligarchs and corporation robber barons of Trump's personal business partners that surround themselves around Trump, as Trump is the chief and commander, making these deals for themselves in backroom dealing. And so now the Treasury Department has invested a certain amount of allocations of national wealth, meaning now the government had to issue out treasury bills and IOUs and security bonds to sell it through Wall Street as IOUs. So basically, the government is borrowing now money in the stock exchange in order to prop up these crypto companies as a Trump national wealth fund. So now the Treasury Department has to invest in these crypto companies, and in order to pay for it, they got to sell security bonds and IOUs and Treasury notes to the Federal Reserve, for the Federal Reserve to take those notes and sell it in the open markets. So now the Treasury Department has invested in these crypto companies, and now these crypto companies are being used like the 3-card Molly game as an analogy. Now you see it, now you don't. Now you see it, now you don't. The biggest Ponzi schemers that surround themselves around Trump, the robber barons and the oligarchs that surround themselves around Trump to make deals for themselves and divvy up government federal contracts for themselves, and use the power of leverage of Trump tariff wars to acquiesce companies and global trading adversely to hostilely merge with activisms and take over other corporations nationally and on the global stage. So Trump surrounds himself with robber barons and oligarchs. And so now what's going to happen with these cryptos, like I said, the transitions are going to be deleted, blurred, so you don't see who's paying who underneath the table when it comes to kickback payments for quid pro quos. Like Trump had an NFT card of himself that made $31 billion with a B within a few days or a few weeks. It netted him $31 billion. And he pumped and dumped it and laundered into whatever investments, whether it be his real estate or whatever. Because most likely that $31 billion probably came from bankers and corporations that he made deal with, order the deals to benefit them and to benefit himself and both parties of transactions. When he makes deals with corporations globally as president, he calls it the art of the deal, but it's basically willing and dealing and racketeering, business racketeering, and they laundering money into each other's pockets. Trump netted $1 billion with one NFT card of himself. And so Emalia created her own crypto and pumped and dumped. Trump also pumped and dumped. So these corporations, they're going to be pumping and dumping, and it's all going to be kickbacks payments in order for them to pay themselves underneath the table to divvy up and use Trump as a medium of exchange as far as tariff wars in order to hostily merge and affect the markets and take over corporations. And just it's an all free for all battle royale how much they can consume as robber barons and Trump oligarchs. And so now the Treasury Department is indebted to these crypto companies because now we share a common national wealth fund that the Treasury Department has to pay for by investing in these cryptos as a reserve. So now it's officially recognized by the government as a reserve. So now who's going to be holding the debt when those currencies are plummeting, when they're pumped and dumped by boiler room stock exchange? You know who's going to be holding the debt purse? Is going to be the American citizens as a stock that did not perform. So now y'all still got to pay those IOUs. When the government Treasury Department issued IOUs to invest in these cryptos, that means whether that crypto does good or bad, the taxpayers still have to pay the full balance of it, the full principal of it, and interest. So the IRS would tax our American citizens to pay for every penny of it, plus all the interest incurred. And who made out like robber barons? It will be Trump's crony business partners, where their shell companies and their shell crypto companies and their boiler room pump and dump schemes. It's the greatest Ponzi scheme ever created in that Oval Office. So what Trump has done, he's created a pyramid scheme with his business barber baron friends and his oligarchs. He's created a pyramid scheme, a Ponzi scheme. And the all-seeing eye behind it is Trump. He's the puppet master on behalf of these oligarchs, making the order of the deals, pulling the strings. So if you look at the dollar, turn it around, and you see a pyramid scheme, the all-seeing eye is Trump pulling the purse strings of this Ponzi scheming. The all-seeing eye, because he's the art of the deals inside of that Oval Office. And so at the end of the day, these crypto companies are going to be pumped and dumped within the Treasury Department. Once they used it for all it's worth as blockchains of laundering money underneath the table to each other as corporations, then they will pump and dump the stocks, and guess who's gonna hold the debt? Because while they pumping, that means the Treasury Department is buying more of it. And so that means Trump's National Wealth Fund is growing more and more and getting more and more fat within the Treasury Department. While they laundering blockchain to each other, payments, quid pro quo, kickback payments, as business racketeers, using the government and Trump's leverage as chief of command with his tariff wars to acquiesce and hostily merge and do activism and put themselves on the boardrooms of corporations in order to force the members out and take over possessions of corporations with Trump's tariff wars. So it's like privating other corporations and hostile mergers through the Treasury Department, through Trump's trying to cripple companies and making them go bankrupt with tariffs. So it's a perfect extortion racket. And now the Treasury Department will pump these stocks up, and they will use this blockchain, and then eventually they will dump it when Trump's term is up. When Trump is out of the office, they will pump and dump these stocks because they won't have no need for it no more. And so who will hold the debt will be the Treasury Department IOUs that have to be paid back through the taxpayers as form of taxation through the IRS and we had to pay the interest incurred by it. So it's the greatest Ponzi scheme of the all-seeing eye of Trumpery. If you look back of that mighty dollar, Trump has made a Ponzi scheme, pyramid scheme, out of the Treasury Department with this crypto three-card Molly, if you will. Now you see the blockchain, now you don't. It's like a three-card Molly type of scam. And they would use other blockchain companies externally to just create so much complexities of blockchain transactions that these companies would delete the transactions out of their computers, because these are shell companies that are controlled as intermediate firewalls between these oligarchs and these robber barons. And the only ones that have track of those records are those private companies, meaning the blockchain transactions, and they will delete them from the computers like it never happened. And so the stocks will go up, and the stocks will be dumped. And the only thing that will be left is the worthless stocks within Wall Street Stock Exchange. And then when those stocks plummet of the National Wealth Fund within the Treasury Department, the American people have to pay for the entire note of those stocks at the highest levels when that stock was at the peak. That means every penny of it, when the stocks was at the highest value level, as far as stock worth, the Treasury Department has to reimburse now the Federal Reserve, because all that was being floated through the stock exchange. So now these three crypto companies that Trump wants to insert in the Treasury Department, now when they get dumped by boiler room racketeers of corporations, corrupt business racketeers, when the stocks is at the highest of its valued as a Trump National Wealth Fund, now when they plummet, now the American citizens have to pay for the every penny of it at the highest levels where it was valued at, as far as the stock worth, the stock share. So now when it gets dumped and worthless, now the American people have to pay for every penny of it at the highest valued, at the highest point of the stock, and interest. So now we're raising the debt ceiling from 36 trillion all the way up to pay for racketeers around Trump, robber barons, oligarchs, to pay for their looting the wealth for their corporations and leaving the taxpayers to the Treasury Department having to pay everything back with federal debt. So it's the greatest pyramid scheme, the greatest Ponzi scheme. When you see that almighty dollar, the all-seeing eye is Trump pulling the puppet strings of the art of the deals for every business CEO that aligns himself in that Oval Office with Trump. Hey, Trump, can you tariff that company? Can you tariff that nation? We need to take over that territory. Those central banks, we need to collapse them. We need to take over those corporations in that nation and in that other nation. And so Trump starts to align himself and target central banks of other nations with tariffs and other governments, in hopes that they can cripple corporations abroad, cripple nations' economies abroad with his tariff wars. And so his Trump, the business people that align with him with Trump, now they can plummet people's stocks abroad, whether it be sovereign coffers of foreign nations' treasury departments, or whether it be their central banks or their private sector corporations of nations abroad. Now they can adversely affect those markets by using Trump to use the power of the government to impose tariffs. Like that, they do insider trading in New York Stock Exchange, and they can adversely cripple other nations' companies and their central banks and even their governments. So now they can control the markets by basically being like mob boss and targeting nations adversely, hostilely, and to pirate them out of business or plummet their stocks in order for the competition, the people that align themselves around Trump, to take over shares, controlling shares, and to undermine their competitors. And then they will be putting themselves with quid pro quos to their own private charters of stock market enlistments of their corporations. They will be making windfall profits, but all that will be paid for by these crypto commonwealth funds that Trump are inserting into the Treasury Department. So when they have no more use and Trump is out of the White House, then they will dump those medium of exchange crypto blockchains because they will have no use for those blockchains no more. And at that point, the stocks will be pumped and dumped. And who will hold the debt? Who will pay for all of this? At the end, it will be the American citizens. Now we raised our national deficit just for these Ponzi schemers to loot it out through blockchains, through cryptos, and they became robber barons and fat and rich as racketeers, and we have to pay every penny of it as from a federal raising the debt ceiling and being taxed for it with interest. So it's the greatest extortionist racket of the art of the deal that this nation has ever witnessed, what Trump is insinuating to do. And so that's why I'm against people being able to coin their own cryptos. Or in other words, for you to create a shell company and say, hey, my crypto is called blah, blah, blah. Whether it be World Liberty, whether it be Doge, whether it be you can name it anything. Because it's not worth nothing. All it is a company saying, I'm a company and I'm allowed to do transaction with blockchain binary codes. That's all it is. You know? There's no real wealth in it. It's only a tool to money launder. For corporations to money launder and business racketeer. And pump and dump. Ponzi schemes. That's all it is. In Wall Street. And it will undermine the markets in the long run. It will undermine the markets, and it will undermine the central banks, and it will undermine the Treasury Department. It's like an infestation. You know when you have termites in your house? Once they get in, eventually your house, once these termites get in, eventually your foundations will be weakened, and you will have to rebuild your house. And that's what these cryptos are all about. It's bacteria. It leaches off the host. It's an infestation. What it is, when you allow people to think that they can coin their own currency exchange or blockchain, as you will, when you allow people to think that they can crypto their own currencies, it will be a lot of underworld criminal organizations cryptoing through shell companies, laundering blockchains, and then deleting the archives. There will be a lot of undermining of the New York Stock Exchange because of it, because it will be pump and dump schemes. And it will infest the Federal Reserve, the New York Stock Exchange, and the Treasury Department. And it will lead to a lot of, eventually it can have a collapse of the markets. And the whole system will be compromised by a bunch of looters, of Ponzi schemers, business racketeers, paying underworld, backroom deal, quid pro quos to each other, paying each other underneath the tables, for the IRS won't be able to tax them. So it's like saying, an analogy is like saying, hey, I'm going to print my own currency and put my face on it and call it blah, 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 whatever name you want to call it. And thinking that you can walk into any store and say, hey, this is my currency. I'm going to buy anything I want. And I can print as much of it as I will. Would you think that will work? Can you go to your printer and print up your face and make up your own currency as a dollar, or instead of a $5 or $20 of American currency, greenback? It's like saying I can print my own currency, design my own dollar bill or my $5 bill. I can design my own currency and walk into any store and say, "Hey, I just coined my own money. This is good." In reality, people won't accept your own money, but this crypto, that's exactly what they're doing. They're cryptoing their own currency or blockchains and laundering it into the stock exchange. So eventually, it's shell companies and is used by these corporations as a vessel to money launder, because since it's not governed by the central banks, the transactions, these companies blur the blockchain, these shell companies, by deleting the archives of the binary code transactions. And so it's a perfect way for the underworld and corporations to avoid taxation and to pump and dump through the stock exchange. And they're using Trump's tariff wars to advantageous their positioning in the stock markets to take over their competitions as pirates by undermining foreign nations, treasuries, central banks, and their private sector companies. And that's why they're aligning themselves around Trump with cryptos in order to do this type of things. And Trump is a perfect vessel with his tariff wars, as long as they willing to pay kickbacks to Trump real estate. Because Trump has to get something out of it. That's how he got $31 billion in a few weeks with his NFT cards. With one NFT card of himself. Because he probably made a couple good deals for probably $100 billion deals, and they made him kickbacks. So now he pumped and dumped it into his real estate. So not only through blockchains can Trump receive money, there's a lot of medium of exchanges that Trump can launder money into himself through business backroom dealing under kickbacks. There's NFT cards I mentioned already. So people that are Trump is doing the art of the deals for, to do hostile mergers to undermine the competitors across the world with his tariff wars. If he's able to take out businesses, competitors, for those businesses to become robber barons and have monopolies on the world stage, they're willing to pay Trump billions of dollars to every NFT card that Trump issues. And they know the stocks are going to be dumped, but it's just a payment, like a checking account. You know, when you transition and make a payment, it leaves your checking account. You insert money into it, and then it leaves when you make a payment for your debts. That's all this NFT cards is, a medium of exchange for his robber baron friends. So they'll pump billions of it. If a corporation can merge with other nations and plummet other nations' resources and minerals and central banks and take out their competitors with Trump's tariff wars, that's billions, even hundreds of billions worth to these corporations. So in order for them to get Trump to do this favors of tariff wars, the art of the deals, they're willing to pay Trump through NFT cards. So now Trump every day can come out with a cartoon card of himself looking like a superhero, and these NFT cards are set as a funneling, laundering money instrument. So these corporations, as long as Trump did his initiatives and completed his activism of hostile mergers or taking out their competitors, now they pay him back through NFT cards. And so if it's worth hundreds of billions of dollars as far as corporations' net worths, they're willing to pay him 10, 20 billion, you know, through NFT cards. So Trump will take that money, the stocks will be pumped, and then Trump will dump it when he wants to cash in on it. And so the investors lose. It looked like the investors lost, but in reality, it's like a checking account. These NFT cards, it's like you deposit the money into the NFT card, and then you cash it out when you make that transaction. So the NFT card is their robber baron friends investing into Trump for racketeering on their behalves. And as long as Trump complete their objectives with tariff wars, then Trump will take that NFT card money and launder it into his real estate or whatever he wants to buy with it, with the funds. And the investors know that they will never see a penny of it back, because it is just basically a payment, a kickback. So on stock exchange, it will look like his NFT cards are being going up and down, and is a sketchy markets, and his stocks goes up and goes down, and he reissues NFT cards every day, and different investors invest up and down, billions and billions and billions of dollars, and so it's basically just money laundering payments into Trump pockets. So it's like, if you think about it, this is this type of robber baron inside the Oval Office. This type of business racketeering has never been done in that Oval Office before on the scale that Trump has mastered. And Judge Roberts and the Supreme Court, they all know what he's doing, and they turn a blind eye to it, as well as the Republicans. And even the Democrats are fucking docile on the subject, and they don't talk about it. And that's what pisses me off about this government. Now let's look at another instrument of how Trump can launder billions and billions of dollars into his pockets. Trump now, on behalf of oligarchs and robber barons and monopolies of corporations, now they can use his name plastered on buildings. So now Trump doesn't have to pay a penny to plaster his name on a building, but it's a medium of exchange, because now people can say, hey, I'm going to pay for your building to be posted up in 20 buildings, maybe 100 buildings. I'm just going to put your logo of your name and call this the Trump Resort, the Trump Plaza, the Trump whatever. And then now he can plaster his name on buildings throughout the world and not have any ownership in the building. It's just his brand as a logo plastered on a building. So now a corporation can say, well, we'll give you 20 billion, 20 million or 30 million to plaster your name on this building. We'll give you 30 million, 40 million to plaster your name on that building. And so now Trump would look on paper like he owns this building, or people would think, oh, that's a Trump building. Trump must own it. So now the banks thinking that Trump is expanding his real estate empire. So now Trump has access to liquidity through the banks, because now he can say, well, I have a stake in 100 buildings or in 1,000 buildings across the world. So now the banks are willing to lend him, because now he's a household name in real estate. But in reality, he doesn't own nothing in the buildings. He just get paid a royalty to plaster his name on it. And they can use that as a medium of exchange, these corporations, as far as saying, hey, the way that we launder money, we can also launder money by paying you royalties to put your name on buildings. It will make you look like you're a mogul, a real estate mogul, because people will think you own these buildings. And so now Trump, if those buildings, if the real estate values start plummeting or has any financial liabilities, Trump doesn't have nothing of liabilities, because all Trump has is his royalties for that name on that building. So now Trump doesn't have to be indebted to any buildings, but he will look like to the public eye, it will look like his name is everywhere as far as owning buildings. People will think, damn, everywhere I go, I see a Trump building. He's the biggest mogul on earth. Every country I go, I see Trump building. But in reality, it's just his logo of his name plastered on a building. And so corporations like the oil companies, the tech companies, and the every other company that uses him as a medium of exchange to leverage his tariff wars on their behalf for their financial gains, they can use that as a medium of exchange, offering to pay him millions and millions and millions of dollars, 20 million, 30 million, 40 million, for him to plaster his name on the building as a form of funneling money into him. And so now Trump will look like on a world stage like he's the most robber baron real estate mogul of the world, because his name When you go everywhere around the world, you see his name on buildings. But in reality, it's like the NFT card. It's an instrument to launder money into him. And so now Trump will look to the bankers like, oh my God, Trump's portfolio of real estate is amazing. He has his name throughout almost every country on earth. He has buildings where his name on it. So now the banks will think that he's a real estate mogul because now he has so much stake in so many real estate buildings. So he's too big to fail. So now Trump can go into any bank and say, hey, here's my real estate portfolio. I'm aligned with these stakeholders and they own these buildings throughout the world. Can I apply for a loan? And so now every bank will say, yes, of course. And now he has never-ending access to banks to buy more buildings for himself too. 100% free and clear. Because now he has NFT money. He has billions and billions of money, of dollars through NFT cards to invest and buy free and clear, and even leverage bank loans to keep on expanding his personal real estate that he will actually have leverage in and asset, net worth and liquidity holdings in. Because now he needs to park that money of NFT cards. You know, he issued one NFT. They issued one NFT card, or he issued one NFT card of himself, and they laundered $31 billion into it. $31 billion can buy you several buildings, free and clear. You don't even have to apply for a loan. You can buy several high-rise buildings with $31 billion, and that's just one NFT card. He got 4 more years in that Oval Office to leverage the world markets as a world sole superpower with the world reserve currency pegged to the petrodollar independency of the world. So now he can use his Oval Office to just become a robber baron, a monopoly on the world stage. And it's for his personal interest. It has nothing to do with official acts like Judge Roberts likes to pretend. Justice Roberts. These are not official acts. These are business racketeering. This is a criminal organization. And so what I'm explaining to you are different channelings of how Trump is getting rich off of this holding office, public office, in his second term. So Trump is going to be rich out of it. He's going to have so much wealth that he probably will give Elon a run for his money as far as his net worth growing dramatically. Because now ExxonMobil would depend on Trump, Chevron would depend on Trump, the tech companies would depend on Trump. To have monopolies for themselves, they would depend on Trump. And any other corporation of any other nation abroad that want to reach out to Trump and say, hey, Trump, we need you to tariff that nation's corporations or that nation's. So Trump can start to network with other corporations abroad of other nations and receive quid pro quo payments for other foreign entities, whether it be political entities of sovereign nation leaders and their bureaucracies, whether it be their central banks, whether it be their private sector companies. So now Trump is willing and dealing for himself as long as they're willing to prop up quid pro quo payments through NFT cards or invest in having his name plastered on buildings to launder money into his pocket as royalties, to make it seem like he's a robber baron of a mogul in real estate. And of course, every day he probably will issue NFT cards, cartoonish, like he's flying to the moon, like he's a cowboy, or like he's Superman, little cartoon NFT cards. But they're worth hundreds of billions because he just in 2 months or in a few weeks, he got 31 billion quid pro quo payments in one NFT card. The same for Emalia. She issued an NFT card and she pumped and dumped it. And Trump also pumped and dumped it because you take the money right away or you wait a little bit to take the 31 billion and then you launder it into your real estate. And see, the investors on these stock NFT cards, they know that they're not gonna see none of that money back because it's just a payment for doing favors for them. So they pay Trump through NFT cards. And Trump takes that money and launders it into whatever he wants to launder it in. Whether it be real estate, whether it be his True Social, whether it be his golf courses, whether it be his private charter planes, yachts, whatever he wants to invest in. He has plenty of money now to invest. And the longer he commits tariff wars, he can not only do it on behalf of American corporations, but on behalf of other nations. Tariff wars. Other nations can go to him and say, hey, we need you to tariff that nation over there for us. How much do you want us to give you? We're willing to invest in your real estate, in your name, in our buildings, plaster on our buildings, and we'll pay you royalties for it. We'll invest in your World Liberty cryptos. What do you want? As long, because other nations will use Trump to tariff other competitor nations, or their central banks, or their private sector companies. So now Trump is making willing and dealing not only for American oligarchs and robber barons, corporations, but now he's doing it for other nations' bureaucracies and other nations' central banks. So now the more deals that he does, the more kickbacks he receives, either through deleted blockchain accounts, or through NFT cards, or through having his name plastered on buildings and receiving royalties. And all that billions of dollars, now he could buy real estate, even borrowing money from the bank. He can just buy high-rise buildings outright, or build brand new buildings outright, because he has billions and billions of dollars being funneled and laundered into his organization. So to sum this up, Trump has made a pyramid scheme of that mighty dollar. If you turn it around as an analogy, Trump has made a pyramid scheme out of the Oval Office. He's the all-seeing eye of the art of the deals, the most grifting business racketeer that Judge Robert Bastard gave birth to as an official act.